Hi, David.
Hi, Karat.
Tell us, in your perception, which nations and economies are advanced in risk practices?
You know, the British are very reluctant to promote themselves. We're very humble and...
Give your own perception.
What I mean is, I think the British are doing quite well. And of course, it's hard for me to say, oh, of course we're the best in the world, because we're very reserved and humble and we don't say that sort of thing. I still think it's true. I think the two countries that I would say are really leading in risk management would be the UK and Australia. And certainly in terms of the development of standards, the ISO 31000 standard, principles and guidelines for risk management, came from Australia. There was an Australian standard, and the Australian standard formed the basis of...
The New Zealand one.
Well, Australia and New Zealand have a shared standards body.
That's right.
And so it came from there and it became ISO 31000 with some small changes. So on the standard side, on the practice side, the development of processes and applications, the development of tools, software tools, of techniques, the development of skills, the development of higher education, degrees and master's degrees and doctorates came from the UK and from Australia. Certification of professionals, risk management professionals, you'll find very strong in both countries. The professional bodies, the Institute of Risk Management, which is global but it's based in London, is the global body for risk management, and also the Australian and New Zealand National Institutes of Risk Management are very strong. So those, I think, are still the centres of excellence nationally to watch. And it may be something to do with the cultures. We talked earlier on about characteristics of different cultures when it comes to risk management. And there may be something about what is called the Anglo culture, about respect for process and rules, about recognising hierarchy and working within hierarchies, about the values of tolerance and respect and valuing other people's opinions and so on. There may be something in the cultures which promotes that sort of interest in risk management. And I think perhaps also you'll find something to do with the history of industry, of industrial development. So obviously we had an industrial revolution in the UK, in Britain, and then that followed with a number of other technological revolutions. But if you think particularly about the oil and gas sector, for example, a lot of the early risk management thinking came from the oil and gas sector, which is very strong in the UK. We were talking about the mining sector, and again there's a lot of mining and heavy industry in Australia, and also from companies based in the UK. And I think these industries, which are safety critical, which are highly regulated, which have a lot of investment, and where the potential impact for good or for bad is quite high, clearly risk is going to be a major part of their thinking. So because these industries were quite big in both the UK and Australia, then I think that promoted an interest in the 1970s and 1980s, maybe before others came along. Now, obviously, others are chasing very hard behind. I do see some very encouraging signs of development in Brazil. Again, there's the big industries in Brazil. There's something about that sort of the energy and creativity of the Brazilian culture and people, which I think is taking a very acute interest. In transnational bodies, some of the work in the United Nations in risk management is great. They've just developed and released last year some guidelines on disaster risk recovery, and some really good guidelines in how to use risk management approaches to quickly get to disaster relief to where it needs to be done. And in some of the non-governmental organisations where, again, based in the UK largely, these organisations are thinking about how to apply, and I think again it's because of the size of the potential impact. You have people dying and potentially a lot more people dying, and so there's real motivation to get in there and do something about it. But these are not nations. And one of the things that's interesting, and you certainly see it in industries, is that maturity in risk management is cyclic, that if you don't sustain capability, competence, maturity, it decays. And so just because maybe the UK and Australia have a leadership position just now, it doesn't mean we're going to keep it. And there may well be other countries which will develop and overtake. And certainly as a risk professional rather than a Brit, I certainly hope that happens. I have no national interest in this, but I'm interested in people understanding and managing risks wherever they come from. And if somebody else can take the baton on and run further and faster than the UK and Australia, well, let's support them in that. But I think they are still currently the nations to look for.
I see. Thank you, David.
Thank you.